Have you ever sat quietly in your chair, maybe with a cup of tea growing cold in your hands, and felt the silence around you settle in just a little too deeply? Not the peaceful kind of silence, but the kind that feels like something used to live in the room and now it doesn't. Maybe it was laughter, footsteps, someone asking what you'd like for lunch, and now it's just you, just the clock ticking, just the wind outside. Living alone after 70. It's not what most people plan for, yet here you are. Perhaps your partner passed, or your children live far away or close by but emotionally distant. Or maybe you never married. Whatever the road that led you here, it's your road, and it's still going. What I want to share with you today isn't about pretending this season of life is always easy. It isn't. There are days that ache with loneliness, mornings that feel hard to get through, and long afternoons when you wonder if anyone even notices you're still around. But let me tell you something that may gently surprise you. You haven't missed your moment. There is something extraordinary about this chapter of life, not because it's flashy, not because anyone is handing you medals for making it through, but because you're still here, and you get to choose what that means. There's a quiet kind of power that comes with waking up in a home that is entirely your own. You can make your routines not out of obligation to anyone else, but out of devotion to your own peace, health, and joy. And the truth is, there are simple habits, little shifts in your day that can make this time not just livable, but deeply fulfilling. Let me tell you about Evelyn. Evelyn is 74. She's lived alone since her husband passed away 5 years ago. For a while, she floated in a daze, waking up whenever eating crackers for dinner, spending too much time watching television with the sound turned low. She said it was like her house turned into a museum, everything still, everything untouched. But then one morning, she heard a bird singing through the open window. Just a little finch, nothing grand, but it felt like a knock on her soul, something small but alive. She decided to try something different. She began each day by standing at that same window, eyes closed, breathing deeply. Just 3 slow breaths. That was it. She told herself, this body is still mine. This day is still mine. Then she started walking, just to the corner at first, then around the block. Some days it rained. Some days her knees ached. But she kept walking, not to lose weight, not to impress anyone, just to feel herself moving forward. She started laying out her clothes the night before, not because she had somewhere to be, but because she wanted to greet the morning with intention. And slowly, quietly, things began to shift. She began reading again, not news, but novels. She picked up an old embroidery hoop from a drawer and started stitching tiny scenes, birds' trees, a steaming cup of coffee. She didn't do it for praise. She just wanted to bring something small and beautiful into the world again. Evelyn said, living alone doesn't mean being lonely. It means I finally get to hear myself think. You see, when you stop waiting for someone else to fill your days, you begin to fill them with your own light. You start remembering the things that once made you feel alive, not for anyone else, but for your own soul. And here's something I hope you'll really let sink in. Structure doesn't restrict you. It frees you. Simple daily routines, rising with a gentle purpose, eating foods that nourish you instead of just fill you, doing one thing each day that lifts your spirit. They're not small things. They are sacred acts. They are how we rebuild meaning, one quiet hour at a time. You don't need to climb mountains. You don't need to join clubs if you don't want to. You don't need to turn into someone else to be worthy of joy. You just need to believe that your days still deserve care, that you still deserve care. Maybe your routine starts with music, a certain song that brings back a younger version of you. Maybe it's setting a pretty tray for breakfast, even if it's just toast and tea. Maybe it's writing 1 sentence a day in a journal, not to be profound, just to be present. Or maybe it's simply opening your window and letting the morning air touch your skin before anyone else's voice enters your world. None of this requires money. None of it needs permission. It only needs one thing, the belief that your time is still sacred. And I promise you it is. When we begin honoring ourselves through the simple things, brushing our hair with care, folding laundry with calm, sitting in the sun for 15 minutes with nothing but breath, we begin to feel less like we're waiting for something to happen and more like we are part of something already unfolding. And what unfolds is beautiful, not perfect, but beautifully real. Let this be the chapter where your life is no longer built around what others need from you, but what your heart needs from you. You don't have to go it alone. I'm right here with you, and so is your strength. There's something quiet that happens when you begin to move through your day with purpose again, not someone else's, but yours. The hours that once felt empty begin to take on shape and color. You start to feel not just like someone passing time, but like someone living it. Still, there are tender places inside, aren't there? Even as you find comfort in your routine, there can be moments when you glance at the phone and wonder why it hasn't rung. You might walk past the kitchen table and see just one place set, and for a second, it tugs at your chest. That ache is real. We don't pretend it isn't. But it doesn't have to control the shape of your day. You're allowed to feel lonely and still live fully. Frank, a friend I once knew, used to say, "Loneliness doesn't ask for company. It asks for connection. There's a difference. You don't need a crowded room. You just need to feel your own heart again and trust that it still has something to give." Frank was 78 when his wife passed. They had shared nearly 50 years together, and when she was gone, it was like the air in his house changed. He used to sit for hours just holding her old cardigan in his lap. But then something remarkable happened. He didn't try to forget. He decided to include her memory in his routines. Each morning, he made 2 cups of coffee, one he drank, one he left on the counter. He started talking to her picture while he sipped. "Well, today's Thursday," he'd say, "and it's going to rain, so I'll skip the garden." He wasn't delusional. He was devoted. And that act of speaking aloud, of honoring what he still felt, helped him move forward without feeling like he was leaving her behind. That's the second truth about this season of life. Your routines can hold your memories, not erase them. If you once loved baking but stopped because there was no one to eat the cookies, bake anyway. Let your house smell like cinnamon just for you. Light the candle. Use the good plates. Water the plants. These are not chores. They are rituals of care. Rituals that remind you I am still here and I matter. Now, I know not every day will feel inspired. Some mornings you may wake up and wonder, what's the point? Especially if your body aches or your heart feels heavy, and that's when a small but powerful shift begins. You show up anyway. Helen, who lives in a tiny apartment on the edge of town, told me once, "Some days I talk to my cat more than any person." She smiled when she said it, but there was pain beneath it too. So she made herself a rule she'd speak one kind word to herself before noon every day. Something like, "You've made it through 100% of your hardest days," or "You are still becoming." Over time, those words became more than a ritual. They became truth. There is no age limit to emotional healing, no expiration date on becoming your own source of comfort. And when you live alone, those quiet moments of kindness toward yourself become the scaffolding for your strength. Helen began taking 10 minutes each day to stretch slowly, gently, just to remember she still had a body that could move. She put on her favorite scarf even when she wasn't going anywhere. She made soup and froze half for next week. These little acts gave her day shape, gave her mind rest, gave her soul something to look forward to. This is where the real transformation begins. Not from changing your life overnight, but from tending to it gently, like a garden. And yes, gardens take time. Sometimes nothing blooms for a while, but the soil is rich. You are still rich with memory, with wisdom, with potential. And with every small action, you plant something: peace, steadiness, joy. You may not see the fruit of every seed right away, but it doesn't mean it isn't growing. That's what routines do for you at this stage of life. They create rhythm, safety, and softness in a world that can sometimes feel too hard or too fast. They aren't about productivity, they're about presence. You begin to realize that silence isn't your enemy. It becomes a canvas, and the beauty of living alone. You get to paint on that canvas however you wish. There's no one rushing you, correcting you, or needing you to perform. You're not invisible here, you're unfolding. This moment in life doesn't have to be about decline. It can be about deepening, about rediscovery, about hearing your own voice again clearly and kindly. Let your routines become a love letter to yourself, one small habit at a time, one kind moment each day. You deserve that, and you don't have to earn it. You just have to begin. There's a soft kind of power that comes from not needing to explain yourself anymore. When you've lived long enough, you start to realize that being understood by others isn't the same as being at peace with yourself. And when you live alone after years, sometimes decades of caring for everyone else, you finally have the space to hear what your own heart has been trying to say all along. That's when your routines shift from simple habits into anchors of joy. Take Nora, for example. She's 74, lives alone in a small house with a creaky back porch, and starts every morning sitting outside with a cup of tea. She calls it her meeting with the world. No phone, no news, just her, the breeze, and the birds. She once told me, "It's the first time in my life I don't feel rushed. And in that stillness, I remember who I am." And that's it. That's the essence of this new chapter. It's not about reinventing yourself into someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the noise, before the titles, before the expectations. Living alone gives you that rare gift, the space to become real again. And as you do, something surprising happens. People begin to feel that steadiness in you, not because you're chasing their attention, but because you're radiating something they can't ignore: wholeness. You don't have to prove anything anymore. You don't need anyone's permission to feel joyful on a Tuesday afternoon just because you bought yourself a slice of cake, or to dance in the living room when your favorite old song comes on the radio. These aren't silly things. These are sacred things, moments of pure, unapologetic aliveness. And joy, you'll find, doesn't need an audience. It just needs your presence. Living alone doesn't mean you are alone in the ways that matter most. It means you finally have space to listen inward. And as you do, you begin to recognize what nourishes you. Maybe it's cooking a warm meal, not just to eat, but to create. Maybe it's taking a walk through your neighborhood and noticing the flowers that just bloomed. Maybe it's starting a small journal where you jot down the little moments that made you smile that day. These aren't distractions, they're declarations. Declarations that say, "I am here, I am enough, I still belong to this world." And it's in that quiet belonging that your soul begins to rest. Now, I don't want to pretend that living alone is always bliss. There will be days when the silence feels too heavy, when you miss the sound of laughter bouncing off the walls. That's okay. Grief is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you've lived and loved deeply. But even in those moments, you can meet yourself with tenderness. You can speak gently to your own heart. You're safe. You've come so far. You're doing beautifully. Words matter, especially the ones we say to ourselves when no one else is around. You begin to realize that independence isn't just physical, it's emotional. It's choosing not to let bitterness grow just because you've been hurt. It's forgiving not because they asked, but because your heart deserves peace. It's setting the table for one and making it beautiful anyway. And over time, that beauty begins to spill over. You start to carry yourself differently. You walk into a room and no longer shrink. You speak up not to argue, but to be clear. You laugh more. You worry less about being misunderstood because you know who you are, and that's more than enough. People notice it. They may not say it out loud, but they feel it. That calm confidence, that quiet joy, that refusal to disappear. Living alone doesn't mean vanishing. It means becoming visible in your own life. This is your time not just to remember the life you had, but to create the life you still can have. One of richness, one of depth, one of peace. So, when you light that candle in the evening, when you fold the blanket neatly on the couch, when you brew your tea just the way you like, know this: you are not just passing time. You are building something sacred. A life that is yours, whole, honest, beautiful. You don't need a full house to feel fulfilled. You just need a full heart. And that, my friend, is entirely within reach. Thank you. Truly thank you for being here with me today. I know these conversations aren't always easy to have. They stir memories. They touch places that might have been quiet for a long time, and yet you stayed. You listened. You allowed yourself to feel. That alone is a kind of courage most people don't talk about. There's a certain beauty in this stage of life that no youth can replicate the depth of it, the softness, the strength, that doesn't shout but stands tall anyway. And if you've ever doubted it, I want to remind you now your presence is still a gift. Your story is still unfolding. Your heart still holds meaning. Living alone after 70 may not have been what you imagined. Maybe it came by choice, maybe by circumstance. But either way, it doesn't have to be the end of something. It can be the beginning of something rare and radiant and real. There's no rule that says joy is reserved for the young. There's no age limit on laughter, on discovery, on finding peace in the rhythm of your own quiet life. Sometimes the greatest chapters are the ones we never planned, the ones we write slowly, morning by morning, in the soft light of a day that is entirely our own. So I hope if nothing else this time we've shared reminded you that you are not forgotten, not by me, not by life itself. You are here, and that matters. And if you felt even a flicker of recognition in anything we've talked about, if something stirred, if something softened, I would love to hear from you. Has your life changed since you began living alone? What routines or quiet joys have helped you find your center again? Please share your story in the comments below. I promise I'll read every word. And maybe your words will help someone else feel a little less alone too. And if this message made you feel seen, if it reminded you of your own strength, your quiet beauty, your right to live with joy, then I'd be honored if you'd stay connected. Just click that little subscribe button. That way we can keep walking this road together, one kind steady step at a time. Because even in solitude, we can still belong to something greater. We can still lift each other one voice at a time. And we can still live fully, bravely, gently, and beautifully. Wherever you are right now, I hope you can take a deep breath, smile softly to yourself, and say the words that matter most. I am here, I am enough, and this is still my time. Take care, dear friend. You are never truly alone.